Hi, my name's Luke, and I'd like to show you how to set a Solari Dator 5 perpetual calendar digital clock. I like to say that this clock advances progressively, and what I mean by that is that every piece of the clock, like the minutes, as it advances, it is slowly advancing the next larger piece, like the hours. So this clock is set best going from smallest to largest, zeroing it out, and then largest back to smallest in order to set it to the correct time. So you'll start by setting the minutes mechanism. This is where the minutes mechanism is located when you take the back of the clock off, and very likely yours is not going to look like mine because they made several versions of the minutes mechanism. There is a synchronous version and a self-winding version, which I'll link to in the comments under this video. This one is known as an impulse type, and so it relies on pulses from a master clock to advance it once a minute. Fortunately, these days you can buy little circuits like this one that perform the function of the master clock and send a pulse to the clock. So let's start setting the minutes. I'm going to start by advancing mine so that the minutes come around to 0. And you want to set this forward until this roller falls off the snail wheel. At which point the minutes should say 0, but they may not. And hopefully if they don't, yours will be a multiple of 10. So if it says 10 or 20 or something like that when the hour changes, don't fret. There's a quick solution for that. There's a lever right here that you can press until the tens digit is a 0. And once you've got the minute set to 0, you can now use this lever. You can grab right here on this pin, which should be painted red. You can push it to the right and then release, and it will advance the hour by 1. So do this until the date advances, and now you know the clock is set to midnight. If you have the 12-hour version of this clock, you should know that it displays noon as 12 and midnight as 0. There's no AM/PM indicator, so that's how you can tell whether you have it set correctly for AM or PM. And again, just like the minutes, if the tens unit says 1 or 2 when the date changes, you can just go to this lever and move it until it comes up with a blank. Rather than a 0, it'll be a blank. Next, it's time to reset the date, and you're going to want to reset it to 1. And there's a lever right here that will probably have some red paint on it, and you can press down and release. And you'll see this dial rotate slowly. And at the end of the month, it will come all the way back around, and the Journey pointer should be pointing at 1. If it isn't, you can loosen this screw right here and change the pointer so that it's pointing at 1. It should be pointing roughly straight down. While you're setting the date, if you find that it starts to advance slowly, or if it doesn't reset all the way back to 1 at the end of the month, that means that you need to rewind the calendar. The calendar has a spring in it, like a music box or an alarm clock, and the act of setting it can make the spring unwind. So if this happens, you can rewind it. And the way to do that is to advance the hour to 11 p.m., which on a 24-hour clock will be 23, and a 12-hour clock it'll be 11. Once it's there, you can come down to this lever that is below and to the left of the calendar wheel. It has a screw in it, and you can pull it to the right and then let this spring pull it back to the left. Do that until the spring no longer has any power to pull the lever back to the left. That's how you know it's fully wound up. Then you can advance the hour 1 to go back to midnight, and you will find that the calendar will start advancing quickly again. Once you have the date set to 1, you can set the month. There's a little lever right here. It may be shaped like a pin or a loop or a tab. There are different shapes for this, but it probably has some red paint on it. You can push it away from you toward the front of the clock, and now you'll be able to rotate this outer wheel, which corresponds to the month. And you'll want to rotate it clockwise until this pointer points to the correct month. Now this wheel has 48 months on it because the clock follows a 4-year cycle, which is how it's able to achieve the correction for February the 29th. So because I'm recording this in 2017 and 2016 was the last leap year, I'm going to turn this clockwise past the leap year months to point at 2 for February. And then I'm going to let go of this lever and kind of wiggle this wheel until it falls into that detent and it won't move from the 2. Once you've set the month here, you'll need to advance the flaps so that they match what this dial says. And so just pull right here on this lever that's painted red until it agrees with this dial. At this point, you can now work backwards from large to small to set the clock to the correct time. So you'll advance the date until you get to the correct date. I recommend setting it to the day before today, and now I can use the trick to rewind the calendar just to make sure that it stays wound for a good long time after this. So I'm going to advance the hour to 23, and now I can come down to this lever and pull it to the right, and keep doing that until it won't come back to the left. And now I can advance the hour one more, and it will go back to midnight, and it will advance the date to the correct date, which is now February the 19th. At this point, I can now set the hour forward. Once you have the hour set, this is a good time to set the day of the week. You can actually set it at any time, but because one of these levers is kind of hook-shaped, I find that it's easier to set it forward when you have the hour on the clock somewhere past about 6 a.m. So all you have to do is take this little wheel that has 7 pins on it and rotate it counterclockwise and make sure that the shorter lever on the left falls past a pin. Once you have that set and you have the hour set correctly, you can advance the minutes using whatever method is appropriate for the minute mechanism that you have. And that's all there is to it, relatively speaking.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him 2 lips like roses and clover.